Welcome back to the AI Ripple Effect podcast, everybody. Today, we're lucky enough to be joined by Matt Hobson-Rohrer, who is the managing partner of Raw Simulation. Welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Thanks, Adrian. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, Matt, why don't you kick it off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, a little bit about Raw Simulation and who you serve from a client perspective?
Absolutely. So I've been in the practice of what we used to call discrete event simulation. Now the buzzword is, or buzz phrase, I should say, is digital twin. But I've been in that community now for 37 years. I've seen a lot of change in that time, but I've also seen, like they say, the more things change, the more they remain the same. I've seen,
Sure.
a lot of inertia in this particular technology as well. Currently at Roar Simulation, we serve clients who are looking to reduce their risk for implementing new automation systems. We're working with a client right now who has already adopted the automation, and they are looking to get more out of it, or to have a playpen, if you will, a sandbox where we can experiment using a computer model of their facility and help them improve performance before they make changes on the factory floor.
This relating to optimization of processes, so like the picking algorithms or their spaghetti mapping across the warehouse specifically, or is it automation more broadly in the organization?
It is process focused, but I want to make a distinction between optimization and simulation, right? Optimization is the process you can build technologies that help you find an optimal solution using a set of parameters. With computer simulation or digital twins, there still needs to be a human in the loop who is deciding on how to experiment with the system, and then interpreting the results, and then making recommendations based on those results. So it's a little bit different, that human in the loop. And when we talk about AI in the future, there's an opportunity there, right? With that human in the loop that's required. The end goals are similar. Like with a simulation, you can get to a better solution, but we don't know that it's the optimal solution, right? We don't really know that it's not what I would call pure optimization that the operations research folks might do. Yeah.
Okay. And who are your typical customers? Are they people who are adopting technology and need help to embed that or make the most out of that?
Most often, we are working with the automation equipment suppliers.
Okay.
So the equipment suppliers, oftentimes their RFP from their end client will say, okay, if you're going to propose a multi-million-dollar automation system for me, you need to do a simulation first.
Sure.
And this actually goes way back to those folks who are old enough to remember the fiasco at the Denver airport when they implemented an automated baggage handling system there. There were lots of issues, mechanical issues and controls issues with that system. And there's a lot of complexity in general to automation systems that have multiple different subsystems or components. And so simulation is a good way to prove that all of the individual pieces of equipment will work well together, and the way they're connected and any buffering between those different systems is evaluated. Simulation is a good way to do that. So we get involved with the equipment suppliers who are required to do a simulation as part of their contract. And then sometimes we get involved with the end customer that is implementing simulation and wants an independent perspective on how the system's going to perform. Some of those equipment suppliers actually perform their own simulations, and they try to be good scientists, but in the end, they're likely not as independent as a company like Roar Simulation would be. We've got no skin in the game. If the system performs or it doesn't perform, it doesn't matter to us. In fact, we actually do really well when the system doesn't perform, right? When we find issues with the way a system's designed. So
interesting. So from your perspective of working with system providers and also with those customers that the systems are deployed to, what are you seeing in specifically the warehouse space, but more broadly across logistics, the key trends at the moment in the market?
Obviously, the pandemic created a lot of, let's say, disruption and stress on supply chains. And after the pandemic, there was a lot of money chasing solutions for supply chains. And we're starting to see a bit of of the pendulum swinging back the other way. In the industry, we're seeing equipment suppliers going bankrupt. Just read a
Right.
headline today on LinkedIn about them going bankrupt. There's the waves of disruption, even after the pandemic, are still affecting us today. Now we've got a new administration here in the US, and tariffs are on every company's mind. And so we've got a new set of challenges for those companies based on how supply chains will need to adapt to a different trading environment.
Are you seeing the historic views on optimizing costs becoming more prevalent as well across that customer base and clients?
Yeah, they're not in the warehouse space. I would say, they're always looking at costs. I will comment on one of my clients has been so cost conscious that they've actually hurt themselves with respect to the capital investments that they've made. Right. So they always look at operating costs and they bring on automation because that's going to help reduce their dependence on labor and reduce some of their operating costs. But however, too much has actually created issues for the capital investments that these companies are making.
And across that whole space that you've covered, what is your take on AI as a positive force in that environment, or even a disruptive force?
We are early days for AI adoption in the supply chain warehouse distribution center space. Certainly there are leaders out there like our Amazons of the world who are pushing the technology hard, but there are a lot of other operators of these types of facilities that they have AI initiatives, but have they trickled down yet to the folks that are getting things in and out the door and getting them distributed across their supply chains? I would say there's a strong pull. Everyone wants to do it, but do they have the time to do it? And can they invest in an environment that's been so disrupted for the last, 4 or 5 years? In the simulation space, I can switch gears to the simulation space. There's a lot of opportunity there.
Right.
When I say things have remained the same for a long time, one of the elements of building digital twins, there's always been a talent gap. For as long as I've been in the industry, there's been lagging on growing the talent to this work.
With the skill set for simulation, or the understanding of tools to simulate, or across everything?
There's several skills involved, right? You need to have the domain knowledge, right? So when you speak to the operators, you speak intelligently about the types of equipment that they're looking to insert into their operation. You also need to know there's a process in simulation that we call abstraction, or I call abstraction. It's looking at a problem and saying, okay, I need to represent this complexity, this logic, this process in some other system that's built to create digital twins. So there was a mathematician, George Box, you may have heard of, English mathematician, and one of his sayings was, all models are wrong, some models are useful. And so I love the purity of that statement, because you have to tell people every model is an abstract representation, right? It's a chalk drawing of the actual system. But if it gives you new insight and it is accurate enough, then it can provide that, then it's valuable. And so there's that skill is required of abstraction. And then you need skill with some tool as well. So, sure. Or, there's a gentleman on LinkedIn right now who's very active in using Python for simulation and using AI to write the Python code for simulations. His name's Harry Monroe. You should recommend looking him up, because he's trailblazing in this area, really trying to democratize simulation.
Awesome.
I'm not sure that AI is ready to replace the human that needs all these skills. And my personal philosophy is it takes about 5 years for someone to get all of those skills to be really good at simulation.
Well, that's a good point, and a great connection to my next question, which is, in an industry notoriously manual process driven and paper based, what are the challenges you're seeing in modernizing and looking at a digital enhancement of that?
Good simulations require a lot of data from the customer.
Right.
And the old phrase "garbage in, garbage out" applies here too. And so we do spend a good portion of our time analyzing that data and then using that data to help structure and potentially help drive the simulation. When we build a model, we want to drive it with the actual customer data.
Right.
So simulation is, a computer simulation, if you boiled it all down, there are really two components to it. It's grabbing random numbers from the computer and it's accelerating time. It's those
Right.
two things.
Right.
So if we use actual data, we can get a sense for what the random numbers might need to be. But in some cases, if we use historical data, we can use the actual data and see, if we had order data from a customer and we had, box sizes and SKUs and all of that information, we can run a simulation with the actual customer's data.
How do you guys go about getting that data in? I mean, I guess there are situations potentially where that's scattered across the whole enterprise, right, in spreadsheets or documents or even paper-based. Do you guys have a process of accessing that data, or you just deal with databases when you get that data in?
Yeah, we're mainly dealing with it in the electronic form. Our customers are a bit self-selecting in that we don't get very many of the paper-based ones anymore. We used to, but back in the 90s, but we don't anymore. Yeah. But even at that, even then, the data we get needs a fair amount of scrutiny and review before we will use it to drive a simulation.
And your journey to date, what have been the key milestones from where you began or the last period of time to where you are today, and any lessons you've learned along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think lessons learned, the biggest lesson learned for me is just this: for the practice of digital twins, that the humans, how important the talent and the humans are to do that. I've had a couple stints with product companies and, selling technology, selling software that's supposed to be the easy button, right? Supposed to make everything easy.
Yeah.
And what I've come to realize is that, at least to date, there's no substitute for someone who has the right skill set coming into it and has spent the requisite amount of time to really, have all the skills necessary to be successful. I think that's my biggest takeaway and my biggest lesson learned.
No, that's great. Thank you. And then looking forwards for Raw Simulation, what are your key milestones over the next 12 months or so?
Raw Simulation is an interesting company in that we're all contractors, including myself. So, my goal is to keep my team as busy as they want to be. And so far, I'm achieving that. I would like to grow my team, and I'm quite particular. So I have an involved process for evaluating folks who'd like to join the team. So growth to me is really dependent on talent. But also I would call myself AI curious at this point, not AI educated. I have actually, for some side personal projects, I've actually had AI write Python and R code for me to process health data.
Right.
And I also have a few colleagues who I meet with regularly to talk about where AI is going and how it could help the simulation community. Of course, the simulation technology providers are all saying, yep, we got AI, or yep, we support Python now, so you can just write all your AI inside our tool or whatever. So they're on the wave, right? They've paddled and they're standing up on their board and they're trying to ride the wave. But I'm just sitting back here on my board watching for the big wave to come, because I don't want to ride several small waves. What I want to do is make the right choice for the business. I think that AI could really help us, back to the data idea, AI could really help us on evaluating that data, providing new insights to that data. A simulation itself can generate a whole bunch of data about the performance of the system right down to the micro level. And so AI can help us in the analysis of that data coming out of a simulation. So I see opportunities for AI on the data science side. I'm pretty skeptical about AI creating models, but if I've got this talent problem that I mentioned earlier, and we've got this technology out there, I'm really hyper aware of how we could address that talent problem with AI.
Great insights. And for the folks out there listening and watching who are super interested about what Raw Simulation do, where can they get access to more information?
But our website is Roar Simulation, ROAR, spelled the easy way. And you can find us there. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile has a button on it. You can schedule a time to just chat with me. And I'm very open to conversations. I think we can get a lot deeper, and we can learn from each other much better than an email. I'd love to have a conversation with folks who are simulation curious or AI curious, or are just thinking, gosh, we can't go on doing things the same way. We need some automation, but I'm not sure where to start.
Well, I'll make sure I include those links into the description of the podcast. And listen, Matt, thanks. Great insights. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining. And thank you, everybody, for joining this episode. We'll see you in the next episode of the AI Ripple Effect. Matt, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, Adrian. Take care.